My name's Mark Webster. This, of course, is Mark Baxter. As you can see, we are in our basement of Davies Son on Savile Row with Norm, resplendent as ever. More to be discussed in this stage. Yeah, thank you very much. Salute.
Salute.
Big question needs to be asked at this particular stage. I need to ask Mr. Baxter, why is he wearing the sleeve of the jumper around the collar of his shirt?
This young man is more than just a sleeve of a jumper.
Is it now?
This is a... Can I reveal?
Please reveal away.
A Polo Ralph cable knitted tie.
It is as well, isn't it?
And it's got a straight bottom.
It's got a cuff.
It's a very strange
It's got a jumper cuff.
I've had a long time. I don't know, it's just odd, but I like it.
It's a very wonderful, strange, extravagant...
And speaking of odd and liking it...
Yes?
What is your headwear of the day?
I tend not to cross the lines into this world, but the reason I did it is because I noticed only the other day that... it's a bit basketball, this is the NBA. The NBA, as we speak, playoffs and finals are coming. 1995, the then champions, the Houston Rockets, arrived at London Arena for a tournament, which meant that the NBA had become a big thing in England, and that's when I started to work for Channel 4 and doing the jobs. And I bought this hat in Houston, probably around 30 years ago as well.
Is that Houston, not the right train station? Houston?
I did, exactly. That's right, yes. Because the train was running late. Or Houston, Texas, downtown. And the reason I thought I'll go with this because... there's a lot of cloth baseball caps with these kind of peaks and with collegiate letters on. And this is from a bar that was near our hotel, which was such a relief because the rest of Houston was like Texas was, which is like no sidewalks and big buildings. This is a weird little road, and this is from a pub, a little bar called the Velvet Elvis, because they had an Elvis picture up in that flock stuff.
Come on.
And that was it. So it's basically 30 years ago, and there's a kind of tribute to that.
Okay, fine.
But more importantly is the reference to your tie.
Yes.
A bit of Ralph is what we're dealing with. We talk about him all the time, but let's talk about this man and his power.
I think Ralph deserves a go in the basement. So, born in the Bronx, 1939, a long while ago now. Real name, which I always bring out, is Ralph Lifshitz.
Yes.
And at age 16 he changed that to Lauren, but I found out this week that his older brother, who was in the army, had already done the same thing.
Yeah, because guess what? He was getting...
wouldn't you? Choi-hiking. Bit of choi-hiking.
Too right.
The name was obviously from his family's heritage, but didn't really scan that well in the States.
No, but if it is... I love the fact, because this makes sense to me of him as a person, as we know how his career went. His dad was a house painter and a painter.
Yeah.
Practical.
Yeah.
And with an eye for something stylish. Creative. Which is exactly where Ralph goes. Old friend of ours, Marcus Ross, who was the editor of Jocks and Nerds magazine, for whom I wrote for ages and you were featured in many times, would never refer to Ralph Lauren as a fashion designer. He called him a stylist. Because he talked about him as a man that found looks and kind of curated it. Now, I guess that kind of happens all the time, but you see the point that he's making with Ralph Lauren, because he just had a great eye.
Fantastic eye. You can see a lot of... I mean, I looked at this week, and even as a younger man, he was at university or college, he had a really good, sharp look and some really good photographs. So he obviously knew about it. Yes. He had some photos taken. Very sharp haircut, very smart. A little man, I think it's fair to say.
Totally.
But, you know, he wore it well.
And still with us. I mean, as we speak, still going strong.
And he obviously had a thing for clothing. He was a bit of a clothes horse. And when he came out of the army, he served in the army in '62. When he came out of the army, he became a tie salesman for Brooks Brothers. So you can see that he's gone back into the traditional Ivy League sort of styles, and he was selling ties there. And then he started doing his own range of ties.
He did.
This is why the tie is out today, because it's an homage.
It definitely is, except it doesn't necessarily reflect what he's doing in '67.
He was a bit wider, wasn't he?
By the way, And I tell you,
any wider, it'd be a blanket.
I know. Anyway, it would literally be the jumper that it always implies that it wants to be, albeit a slightly smaller one.
Warm,
on one's goods.
Warm.
Yes, it's wrong. It's not a seasonal tie
not today,
at all.
No, not today.
In the Bronx, only 3 years apart in birth, Calvin Klein.
Calvin Klein.
There would have been a period in my life where I thought that Ralph Lauren and Calvin Klein were two made-up names to describe products, be it aftershave or pants or t-shirts.
Fair point,
And I think that's amazing that there's two lads who've come from very working-class stock who've worked their way up.
Near neighbours.
Exactly, quite right.
Yeah.
Only 3 years apart, who the impact on the world in general as a phrase, let alone people who care about clothes or not.
Yeah.
On to 67. He's had one drawer in an office in the Empire State Building.
Amazing.
And he is reintroducing, and I think this is a fair phrase to use, although it becomes extraordinarily contemporary, wide ties. Yeah. Doesn't sound revolutionary when you say it out loud now, does it?
No, it's an interesting move, isn't it? But actually, if you think about it, it's catching the wave of the sort of hippie years coming. It got a bit hairy and.
Well, he's precursing it a little bit.
I think it's where his skills are.
Quite.
He reads this early. He's obviously reading what's coming down the road early. The Empire State thing is a fascinating thing because that building was full of wholesalers. Yeah. Shirts, ties.
It's like the Brill building just down the road, which is full of songwriters.
It's quite incredible. I think they actually went in there and like, who's got ties? The full floor, and he's got a drawer. But the next move, again, is where we got a hats off to the man. He ends up selling a concession at Bloomingdale's. Right. Which is the first designer to get a concession in a department store like that. This is 68. It's very early.
So he's done that within a year. He's done something so right. He's got his finger on the pulse of something.
He sets up the tie company. The designs that he's doing, they're picking up on. They're into it. So they then take the concession. So what I'm trying to say is the steps he's making are all pretty clever, and also sure-footed. He's on his way, and that, obviously that's making his name.
We kind of all know, and I'm going to guess a lot of people out there looking at this going to go, well, yeah, the Ralph Lauren story. Of course, we all know it. My suspicion is that a lot of us don't know who Ralph Lauren was until a certain point in life. This is a lot of retrograde thinking. Yeah. Because I didn't realise. I mean, and again, I don't think I knew who he was in the 70s. But guess what I did?
Probably not. No.
But indirectly, 1974, The Great Gatsby. Yeah. 1977, Annie Hall.
Big films. I mean, to get
for the looks,
to get that gig to supply those films from a drawer in the Empire State Building. Yes. 4 years later, in some cases, it's a very quick. Move, and he's working it well. He must be doing a lot of networking. And I did read that when people bought the ties from him, he would hand deliver them. So you can imagine he's working it. He's out there doing,
which makes you love him. It makes you love him even more and more.
I love the fella.
67 till say 74, and then into 77. Now I'm saying wide tie. I'm also now saying the language of this side of the of the pond. Kipper tie.
Yeah.
No two ways about it. I'm sure I mentioned this before. I think it was John Collier's window in Ashford High Street had the Gatsby range in 74-5.
Yeah.
That I looked at in awe. Wide collared jackets, big turn-ups on trousers, patterned shirts, wide, long collars.
It's quite a look.
That was there in my head before we saw glam rock become that very flowery, almost cartoony take on it. Yeah. He had to have been the guy that kind of started that story, didn't he?
He's definitely got that ball rolling, hasn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, he's provided for, obviously, the stuff for that film. The film does really well. The look is then picked up by...
even the Baker's Boy hat, which the Rubettes are on Top Pops doing Sugar Baby Love, dressed with a Robert Redford hat
so
on.
Designers in this country or elsewhere are looking at thinking... This is the Gatsby years coming here, and they start putting the windows of high streets, and likes of you, nose pressed up against the window. I'm having a bit of that. Yeah. So the guy was very influential, and I did read that he introduced shirts around that time as well, his own range of shirts. But the Polo player, which he used the name Polo quite early on.
He did. Polo was his word because he was so influenced by posh.
Never been to a polo field.
No.
So he just aspirational.
He gets the point.
He's aspirational.
Of what that's all about.
That's going to be old money playing that game.
I just pick up. Diane Keaton said about Annie Hall in 77. We borrowed and bought from Ralph Lauren.
Yeah.
So that amazing look, la-di-da look that she had is incredible. So pick up on that.
My point, I'm trying to make is briefly, is that the shirt, the polo player was on the cuff.
See, that comes. See, that's what
on the cuff.
See, that's what happens next, because of course you get that, and that's on ladies' shirts, and it's on a cuff.
Yeah.
Now we get the pay dirt. 71, I think it is, the polo shirt.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I think this is probably important to point out that I think it's 26 and 27, Rene Lacoste won, I think, the 2 American titles. And he was the guy who gave us effectively
branded
only 3 buttons, blah, blah, blah. He was called the Crocodile because of the way he played. You get the logo. But come 71... I think this is when, not then literally that year, arguably it could have been if I was a bit older. You know, I'm too young to be getting involved in expensive polo shirts. But there's no two ways about it. That literal design classic stayed there for decades.
Yeah, and what he did with it was René Lacoste and Fred Perry, basically a white sports shirt.
Yeah.
Then a few colours were breaking. They're getting a few colours in, but he had 17 colours. Ralph had 17 colours.
Yeah, and he's put his polo player here.
And so he's taken the idea and he's expanded it even bigger. And of course, 17 colours in getting noticed. The fellow was going for it. I mean, I've got a lot of respect for that. I mean, he's not only borrowing the idea or being inspired by the idea, he's then expanding it. And in he's away, and he's obviously looking at premises. And
I think it's obviously incredibly important in his development is the success of that, but it also ties in with the fact, and arguably is part of that story, is what is really massive is 1981.
Yeah.
He gets a shop in Old Bond Street.
That's where
New Bond Street, rather. Sorry, which is the smaller one.
Smaller one, yeah.
One of the
townhouse, wasn't
it? In cahoots with Browns initially. Browns brought him in.
Okay.
So
didn't know
that shop, I think Browns were even involved in the shop. So up to that point, it was Browns going, this guy is doing these things, we're all going to be interested in him.
Yeah.
So in 81, you kind of get, so you start to see the clothes. Excuse me. What you then get is this shop. And this shop, it looks more Bond Street than Bond Street does. It looks Old English Gentleman's Club, which is what Ralph's all about anyway.
He taps into that really well. I went to that shop a few times. I wouldn't say as early as 81. That does seem early for me to go. But definitely aware of would have become aware of the name and the branding. Wouldn't know his story. I wouldn't know nothing about that. Just the branding of the polo player. And around that time, there was a lot of the ultimate accolade in the south east of London would be to get a cotchel of snide Ralphs. I mean, shirts.
And now we arrive at the truth of the matter. Guess who may have been the most
I may have played a small part in this, but I certainly had
the leading Jekyll of all times. Pardon our parlance.
No, he would have been very, very desirable, and
this is the thing, so easily copied.
Yeah, very easy copied.
Because it's just a cheap T-shirt and
my mum was up all night saying
terrible. I bet she was with his little hat and his little mallet.
But I don't know where they come from. I don't want to know where they come from.
It's none of my business.
But all I know is we did quite nicely out of selling those on. So what I'm trying to say is that became a brand in demand.
It did, and I know this as I know it's physical as an experience because every one of my grandkids, fundamentally on their arrival, me and Mrs. Webster, little pilgrimage down to Old Bond Street to buy them their little Ralph.
Oh, nice.
In their little brown bag, in that lovely little shop.
Yeah.
And they're all on little shelves.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful, it's a clever, brilliant experience.
Yes, it was.
And I think I think this is the point. We've now arrived in a period where a bit of Ralph as a phrase has now definitely arrived in the language.
It's definitely gone over.
Football terraces included now, pop stars included now.
Definitely.
He's now in the conversation, isn't he?
Certainly pubs. Certainly pubs.
92, he introduces sport as a label. By the way, in between that, of course, what he's done as a person himself is. I'm not ignoring the fact that, of course, there's all this wonderful denim and carpet and knits, but he's gone a little bit. Yeah, thank you. But he's suddenly gone Wild West, hasn't he?
Oh no, he's definitely.
He's gone a bit cowboy, hasn't he?
Well, he's got a big ranch, hasn't he? Big ranch out in wherever it is.
It probably explains the fact that basically his entire range seemed to be him on the prairie.
He's playing, isn't he? He's playing. He's in the sort of ballrooms of the Wall Street.
By the way, 1939 from the Bronx, Lipschitz, and now he's home on the range.
He's obviously cracked an idea, and he's taken it to the nth degree. So we've got the cowboy look, we've got the rugby look, we've got the sporty look, we've got the the classic shirt and tie look, the preppy look. It was very. And I read it described this week as a sort of US tweedy British look, but with a French cut. Which is
it's a lovely idea.
Covers pretty much everything about it. I mean, I was in the shop today in preparation for this. They thought I was about.
Which, by the way, that opened in '99.
Yeah,
which is
on the corner.
It's got a gargantuan-sized building, which is it's like visiting a museum.
Well, it's like an Ocean Liner. That was how it was described. But it's in there is a wonderful range of furniture and objet d'art and bits and pieces.
Everything's picked out.
Polo mallets, everything works. Big paintings. It really does work as a lifestyle choice. And the man obviously tapped into that, and I'm big on it.
It's why I reference, and thankfully it goes back to your youth, 92 and sport, is because at that point, I think it's particularly when we see hip hop culture getting involved.
Definitely, yeah.
And the great thing about it is, and these people, God bless these boys, they're called the Low Lifes from Brooklyn.
Love it.
Best name in the world because it's Polo Life, and their outfits are called Lowdown, but basically they've just nicked everything.
Yeah, it's a toe in Ralph, isn't they?
And they introduced kind of by any means necessary, and another popular phrase from the world of hip hop, the opportunity to own preppy looking clothes. But what they did by owning preppy looking clothes is they turned it into street culture.
Yeah.
It was kind of a brilliant piece of irony that these lads introduced.
And they're influenced by doing that, but then spreading to the rest of the hip hop world.
And I don't know how it worked in the Ralph Lauren Corp, but it didn't do them any harm in the long term.
In fact, I read they actually tapped into that a little bit. They did a collaboration with Morehouse College and I think it was Spelman College, with predominantly black universities or colleges.
They wanted to be part of that world.
They acknowledged it and they embraced it in some ways, which I think was a really smart one.
And definitely, I mean, the bear. I mean, I had a bear at one point, and I asked Deb about that the other day, and she said, "I think it rotted," which what she meant was when we had our flat in Canning Town, one of the walls was a bit wet, and I think the jumper got and it died.
Yeah.
But the bear become a big hip hop thing, which is weird because it's like soft and cuddly and
nothing
warm.
really makes a lot of sense with that, but it was just a thing you saw everywhere. And
totally.
I think again because it was quite expensive. To be fair, it's always been quite expensive. Again, it's that aspirational. I need some. However you come across it is another story.
And definitely, Fat Farm. Was influenced by
Fat Farm,
extraordinary preppy. Just basically did Ralph-looking stuff, but bigger, wider, longer, And Tommy Hilfiger arrives around the same time. Big broad bands of colours, red, white, and blue. Loads of that kind of stuff. Bit more yachty. But all of that becomes part of hip hop culture, which means it becomes streetwear, doesn't it?
Absolutely,
immediately. But fully embraced by Ralph Lauren's world.
I don't think he was that. Again, I think they're smart enough. The people are smart enough there to realise if you're being picked up by these guys, you ain't doing a bad job. And a lot of what he did. It has a lot of echoes with Sir Paul Smith. A lot of echoes, like very, very small, tiny start of it all. Some really clever moves in bringing it to the table, and then, but also keeping hold of the company, owning the company.
Very good point.
Which I think Ralph and Support have both done the same thing, and they managed to oversee that. That can't have been easy.
Yeah, because
that can't have been
there's been many great names in clothes which have moved on several times, and they should create their own look. But we need to pay, just before we finish talking about him, homage to a man that Ralph Lauren pays homage to.
Yes.
Who is the son of a naval architect from Boston, Massachusetts, by the name of Bobby Garnett.
Yeah.
So a man brought up in middle class Boston.
Yep.
But he's a black man brought up in middle class Boston, which is, by the way, shouldn't be a big issue, but patently
Probably
is.
was, yeah, probably was then.
But this guy, from day one, he was selling stuff from his dorm when he was at university.
Yeah,
this man was
a trader,
player from day on, and he had apparently for decades some of the greatest shops and showrooms in Boston and that area. He was a collector and curator and seller thereof
of vintage clothing,
and
a dealer.
Ralph would go there.
Yeah.
To get looks,
and you can see that when you know that stuff, and you can start saying, "Where's these ideas coming from?" They're coming from everywhere. They're coming from markets. Totally. They're coming from flea markets. They're coming from dealers like Bobby, who would, if they get to know you, they would say, "Look, have you seen this?" I mean, there's an whole range going to come out of that. I mean, a lot of respect for the fella. Yeah, a lot of respect.
And I like the fact that he put clothes on. Seabiscuit. I don't know. Great looking.
Loved it.
Great clothes.
Loved the film.
He did Ali. He did Casino as well.
Yeah, well, again, I mean, come on.
I mean, so...
Like Rainbow, isn't it?
And the good news, I think he died about too young, mid-60s, but I believe his daughter Jessica has kind of kept it all going, and there's a warehouse of his stuff.
Can you imagine going there?
Somewhere out there.
Imagine going there.
He would shop constantly across Europe, and one of the things that became a big deal in his life... Arsenal shirts.
Yeah. I've really got to say a lot of stuff.
I'm not judging the man, but that's him.
But apparently, he's a massive collector of the range of shirts, isn't he?
He is, and also, so that's him and Spike Lee, who are obviously the par excellence Arsenal fans of America. So well done to them.
Yes.
So that's a little bit. That's a bit of Ralph.
Yeah.
Let's do some new bits now. Over to you, Bo.
New bits. I'm going with Paraboot today, which is a French.
Oh, they are. Oh, I love the canvas babies.
Well, the French footwear company, which has been going since 1908, I've got written down here, which is seems a long while ago.
Is it literally parachute boots?
I don't know. It's just I don't know what. Actually, he's asked me a question. I don't know the answer. Google, everyone, Google. But no, the style I'm picking up on is the Pacific, which is the sandal. The open-toe sandal, which is a very nice piece of kit.
And it was, how seasonal of you, Baxter?
Well, with the weather today. But the reason why I like the idea is they actually made them for the Carthusian monks, first of all, who were on their feet a lot.
What? How many Carthusian monks are in the world?
From where Paraboot is based, it's in the mountains of deepest France. So, a local Carthusian monk.
To keep the monks happy?
Yeah, they must have said, here. You ain't got an old pair of old sandals out the back of you, and they would have gone, leave it with us.
Don't worry about it, lads.
We'll make it, that's where it started.
By the way, we're actually doing that accent, aren't we?
Very close there, wasn't it?
But the approximation.
So from those like trekking around picking up wildflowers to make their dandelion wine, and then perhaps I'm treading grapes. Stay with me, Liz.
You're improvising, aren't you?
Certainly, no. You're riffing. They were constantly worn, and then they thought, "Hang on, there's a market here for these."
So
they are now available. They're now available in tan and black, and they are a lovely thing. They're very nice.
I want some monk sandals. I want some monk sandals.
They're a bit of you, Webster.
Which sounds like a horrible euphemism.
I can see you trotting around the Saint-Tropez or Southend, Georgia.
The same difference.
Same difference. But they are a lovely thing.
I'm going with shoe wear still.
Yes.
And also, do you know what? Not far off the beaten track that you're on here.
Yeah.
I'm going back to 1866, actually, in terms of the starting point.
Love it.
Rushton, as we know, is shoe central, that area.
Yeah. We've been up there.
William Green and Son. And I didn't know this part of the conversation. William Green and Son, 1866, I think it's at the turn of the century, they've gone, that's not catchy enough. Compacted it down, Grenson.
Oh, yeah.
Grenson, which sounds like... I thought that sounds like a name that was invented by a boardroom of creatives in 2004.
Yeah.
Exactly. But it's just it compacted William Green and Son. And only the other day, and they said it, and I thought, wow, yeah, I've not seen this like this. They've gone, guess what? And they're doing a moccasin.
Oh, right.
Now, we've talked loafers loads.
Yeah.
And the joy of their moccasin is showing you why it's not a loafer. Because it's what, obviously, from Native American culture is where it begins.
Yeah.
Picture that in your head.
Yeah.
That's what the shoe's like.
Okay.
Flatter, wider, softer, stitched,
Nice.
floppier sole.
Nice.
It is a moccasin.
Yeah.
And a moccasin is a word without wishing to dismiss it in too much detail, which implies sewing. It's like moccasewing.
You listening, Nom?
Yeah. It's not from your world, Nom. Don't worry about that one. So the implications are there.
Yeah, it's all there.
And so the moccasin as a shoe has popped up every now and then. I wore my dad's moccasins when I went to sing for the choir at Salisbury Cathedral when I was 14.
Oh, wow. Any photos of you in the...
There's none. What's slightly worrying is I was probably 14 and I had the same size feet as my dad. But that was those John Thor Sweeney.
You never mentioned that before.
Moccasins.
You'd never mentioned that before.
Can't believe I mentioned it now. but because at that point, you know, it's the puckered bit around the upper that implies it.
They were a thing for a while, weren't they?
They were. And Grenson's having a go again.
Yeah.
And they look really supple and lovely.
Nice and soft. Give your feet a treat.
yeah.
Give your feet a treat.
Elephant in the room, Bax, before we go.
Yes, before we go. Yes, well, you know.
We know that this boy lives large and proud on a t-shirts and mugs in your world.
And tote bags.
But a tote bag.
A tote bag.
But just in case you wanted to go loud and proud.
This is the punters demanding.
Thank you. That's what they did.
It's the punters demanding, saying, "Why have you not got the Clobbered logo on a plain black T-shirt?" So we have now. We have.
And
so
there it is.
There's a new piece added to our range.
It is. And our range is big and large, and you can subscribe to us and also buy stuff. As you know, it's free for subscription.
All free.
To probably pay for the merchandise.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Neither here nor yon. But either way, that's Clobbered.